Greetings everyone, my name is Gigi and this is Let's Build, wherein I build a Lego set, time to different media, and talk about the facts concerning the topic of the build. Today's build is the Lego Ideas Typewriter versus the Typing of the Dead. The footage I am using for this game is for science, educational, and research purposes. My content is transformative and protected under fair use. All footage is time-lapse with commentary. There will be spoilers for the Typing of the Dead. You have been warned. Specifications of the Lego set. Unplug from your digital life and recall simpler times as you build a Lego Ideas model of an old-fashioned typewriter. The design is inspired by the classic typewriter used by the Lego Group's founder, Ole Kirk Kristiansen, and it moves and sounds just like the real thing. The brick-built center typebar rises each time a letter key is pressed and is linked to the cartridge that moves across as you type. There is also a platen roller that you can feed real paper into. Created by a Lego fan for Lego fans. Created by a Lego fan and voted for by Lego fans, this detailed typewriter model comes with a letter written by Ole Kirk Kristiansen, a member of the fourth generation of Lego Group's owner family. Slot this letter into the typewriter to complete a delightful display piece. Top gift. Part of a collection of premium quality Lego building kits for adults, this model comes with clear instructions and makes the best gift for yourself, Lego fans, writers, and lovers of all things retro. Spark nostalgic feelings and the curiosity of younger fans who have never seen a typewriter before with this Lego Ideas build and display model that moves and sounds just like the real thing. Features a center type bar that rises each time a letter key is pressed, linked to a cartridge that moves across as you type, plus a platen roller that you can feed real paper into. The design is inspired by the classic typewriter used by the Lego Group's founder, Ole Kirk Kristiansen. Includes a booklet with 43 language versions of the letter written and signed by Ole Kirk Kristiansen of the Lego Group's owner family. Choose your language and put the letter into the typewriter. Great for spending quality time alone or with the family, this nostalgic collectible model makes a unique birthday or holiday gift for yourself, Lego fans, writers, and lovers of all things retro. The typewriter model measures over 4.5 inches high, 10.5 inches wide, and 10.5 inches deep, and is a delightful display piece to photograph and share pictures of with friends. The 2079-piece buildable model also comes with an illustrated booklet featuring the set's fan designer and Lego designers, plus step-by-step instructions to help guide you through this challenging build. This building set for adults is part of a collection of exciting Lego Ideas models, each created by a fan designer, voted for by thousands of Lego's fans, and produced by the Lego Group. Writing creative and classic design. Indulge your passions for the art of creative writing and classic design as you build, then find that special place for your Lego typewriter. Ole Kirk Kristiansen, chairman of the Lego Group and representative of the fourth generation of the owner family, saw this set as a fun opportunity to write a letter to the dedicated Lego Ideas fans, you. This letter is printed in 43 different languages in the enclosed booklet. Find one you would like to display in your Lego typewriter and carefully tear it from the booklet. I hope this classic typewriter will bring back fond memories or make you feel like a cool 1950s reporter or best-selling author. Thomas Kirk Kristiansen, epitome of modern revolution. The classic typewriter was an invaluable instrument for businesses all over the world, as it was for Ole Kirk Kristiansen and his life's work in the Lego Group. Iconic authors created some of the world's most beloved modern literature on theirs. Investigative reporters put their reputation at stake to unravel the truth, and friends and loved ones poured their hearts out over the keys. It is an icon of the modern revolution. Invented in 1874, the first commercial typewriters took a decade to break into the mainstream culture. For almost 100 years, they were found in most offices and homes, replacing handwritten records and setting new standards for correspondence. Some adult fans may remember taking such typing lessons in school when a high words per minute count were considered a coveted skill on their resume. The smell of the oiled inner metal workings, the gratifying feeling of a perfect typo-free document, or getting your hand smudged with ink when changing the ribbon. Younger fans have been raised with computers and electronic keyboard typing as second nature. While functionality has developed significantly, the keyboard layout itself still remains largely unchanged. From your laptop to phone and tablet touch screens used on Earth and even by astronauts in space, the next time you use your QWERTY keyboard, think of the development it's gone through to this day. Who knows where it may go next? Meet the man behind the keys. Steve Guinness from Chester, United Kingdom, is a lifelong Lego fan and school teacher of design and technology who has turned his passion for creativity and Lego bricks into a dream job. Now, I teach part-time and also have my own business making bespoke Lego models and running Lego workshops for local schools, libraries, and museums. I have been interested in Lego building since I was a young child. It's a fantastic system, and I'm passionate about showing other adults that it's not just a kid's toy. It's something people of all ages can enjoy. A great type of challenge, Steve loves classic manual typewriters and wanted to see how far he could take a Lego version of one. I bought a vintage typewriter for research and started playing with the bricks and mechanisms. The first version took about 2 weeks to complete, and then I spent weeks revising and improvising it in 7 different versions. The keyboard layout was a challenge. I tested a number of different techniques, and when I reduced the size of the typewriter, it all came together. I love the mechanical design and the hand crank with its realistic movement and signature clicking sound of a real typewriter. Thanks to everyone who helped me make this model come to life. I hope it will bring nostalgia to adult fans like me and wonder and curiosity to younger fans who might never have seen a real typewriter. Lego Ideas Newshounds. Lego Idea designers James May, Wes Talbot, and Martin Fink immediately donned in their retro-thinking caps when Steve's model landed on their desks. The opportunity to investigate and experiment with classic vintage technology and new Lego building techniques was simply an irresistible combination. I loved how the original model looked so realistic. We wanted to build it on a developing rotating platen, which now means real paper can actually feed through it. I hope fans will love the abundance of features and functions like this we packed into the model. James May, Lego model designer. Steve's attention to detail is just remarkable. We included aesthetics into the model that any fan of typewriters would love to see, like the lever to change the ink color and manufacturer's label, the escapement where all the key arms connect with the metallic tiles, and how the textile ribbon fits behind it, is the main focal point for the model. Wes Talbot, LEGO Design Master. We had fun experimenting with different graphic designs for the keys and the manufacturer's name on the back. We went through a series of different styles, shapes, and forms before we landed on this 1950s inspired look and feel. And, of course, with an iconic LEGO identity. Martin Fink, LEGO graphic designer. The letter included in the kit. From Billund, Denmark, July 2021. Dear LEGO friend, it gives me great pleasure that this set, created by fan designer Steve Guinness and the LEGO Ideas team, has made its way to your desk. My great-grandfather and LEGO founder, Ole Kirk Kristiansen, was born in 1891, just a few years after the typewriter and telephone were invented. Both inventions revolutionized communication and played a big part in developing modern businesses across the globe. Ole's first typewriter sat on his desk when he founded the company. In 1958, my grandfather, Godfred, typed the patent application on a typewriter much like this one for the LEGO Systems bricks that you will find in this set. We still have the documents on display in the LEGO House History collection. Technology has evolved by leaps and bounds, but the sight and sounds of classic typewriters still remind me of visiting my grandfather and my father, Kjeld, in their offices when I was a child. It felt exciting and important, and they let me write stories and secret messages on their typewriters. One thing remains the same to this day. We still aim to inspire and develop the builders of tomorrow, and it always amazes me how fans and LEGO Ideas designers express their creative talents with LEGO bricks. Keep rebuilding the world. Always. Kind regards, Thomas Kirk Kristiansen. A typewriter is a mechanical or electromechanical machine for typing characters. Typically, a typewriter has an array of keys. Each one causes a different single character to be produced on paper by striking an inked ribbon selectively against the paper with a type element. Thereby, the machine produces a legible written document composed of ink and paper. By the end of the 19th century, a person who used such a device was referred to as a typewriter. The first commercial typewriters were introduced in 1874, but did not become common in offices in the United States until after the mid-1880s. The typewriter quickly became an indispensable tool for practically all writing other than personal handwritten correspondence. It was widely used by professional writers in offices, in business correspondence in private homes, and by students preparing written assignments. Typewriters were a standard fixture in most offices up till 1980s. After that, they began to be largely supplanted by personal computers running word processing software. Nevertheless, typewriters remain common in some parts of the world. For example, typewriters are still used in many Indian cities and towns, especially in roadside and legal offices, due to lack of continuous, reliable electricity. The QWERTY keyboard layout, developed for typewriters in the 1870s, remains the de facto standard for English language computer keyboards. The origins of this layout still need to be clarified. Similar typewriter keyboards with layouts optimized for other languages and orthographies emerged soon afterward, and their layouts have also become standard for computer keyboards in their respective markets. History. Although many modern typewriters have one of several similar designs, their invention was incremental, developed by numerous inventors working independently or in competition with each other over a series of decades. As with the automobile, the telephone, and telegraph, several people contributed insights and inventions that eventually resulted in ever more commercially successful instruments. Historians have estimated that some form of the typewriter was invented 52 separate times as thinkers and tinkerers tried to come up with a workable design. Some early typing instruments included, in 1575, an Italian printmaker, Francesco Rampoggetto, invented the scrittura tattile, a machine to impress letters on paper. In 1714, Henry Mill obtained a patent in Britain for a machine that, from the patent, appears to have been similar to a typewriter. The patent shows that this machine was created. He hath by his great studies and pain and expense invented and brought to perfection an artificial machine or method for impressing or transcribing of letters, one after another, as in writing, whereby all writing whatsoever may be engrossed in paper or parchment so neat and exact as to not be distinguished from print, that the said machine or method may be of great use in settlements and public records, the impression being deeper and of a more lasting than any other writing, and not to be erased or counterfeited without manifest discovery. In 1802, Italian Agostino Fantoni developed a particular writing typewriter to enable his blind sister to write. Between 1801 and 1808, Italian Pellegrino Turri invented a typewriter for his blind friend Countess Carolina Fantoni di Vivizano. In 1823, Italian Petrio Conti di Silavegna invented a new model of the typewriter, the tachigrafo, also known as tachi tipo. In 1829, American William Austin Pert patented a machine called the typographer, which, in common with many other early machines, is listed as the first typewriter. The London Science Museum describes it as merely the first writing mechanism whose invention was documented. But even that claim may be excessive since Turri's invention predates it. By the mid-19th century, the increasing pace of business communication had created a need to mechanize the writing process. Stenographers and telegraphers could take down information at rates up to 130 words per minute, whereas a writer with a pen was limited to a maximum of 30 words per minute. From the 1853 speed record. From 1829 to 1870, many printing or typing machines were patented by inventors in Europe and America, but none went into commercial production. American Charles Thuber developed multiple patents, of which his first in 1843 was created as an aid to blind people, such as the 1845 chirographer. In 1855, the Italian Giuseppe Ravizia created a prototype typewriter called Cambalo Scravano o Macchina de Scrivere, e Tesi, the scribe harpsichord or machine for writing with keys. It was an advanced machine that let the user see the writing as it was typed. In 1861, Father Francesco Gioia de Azevedo, a Brazilian priest, made his typewriter with basic materials and tools such as wood and knives. In that same year, Brazilian Emperor D. Pedro II presented a gold medal to Father Azevedo for his invention. Many Brazilian people, as well as the Brazilian federal government, recognized Father Azevedo as the inventor of the typewriter, a claim that has been the subject of some controversy. In 1865, John Pratt of Alabama built a machine called the Tarotype, which appeared in 1867 Scientific American article and inspired other inventors. Between 1864 and 1867, Peter Mitterhofer, a carpenter from South Tyrol, a then part of Austria, developed several models and fully functioning prototype typewriter in 1867. The Scholes and Glidden typewriter. The first typewriter to be commercially successful was patented in 1868 by Americans Christopher Latham Scholes, Frank Havel Hall, Carlos Glidden, and Samuel W. Soule in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, although Scholes soon disowned the machine and refused to use it or even recommend it. The working prototype was made by clockmaker and machinist Matthias Schwalbach. Hall, Glidden, and Soule sold their shares in the patent to Scholes and James Densmore, who made an agreement with E. Remington and Sons, the famous manufacturer for sewing machines, to commercialize the machines as the Scholes and Glidden typewriter. This was the origin of the term typewriter. Remington began production of its first typewriter on March 1st, 1873, in New York. It had a QWERTY keyboard layout which, because of the machine's success, was slowly adopted by other typewriter manufacturers. As with most other early typewriters, because the type bars struck upward, the typist could not see the characters as they were typed. This arrangement, retronomically known as understrike, would eventually give way to so-called front strike mechanisms in later competing machines. The index typewriter. The index typewriter came into the market in the early 1880s. The index typewriter uses a pointer or stylus to choose a letter from an index. The pointer is mechanically linked so that the letter chosen would then be printed, most often by the activation of a lever. The index typewriter was briefly popular in niche markets. Although they were slower than keyboard-type machines, they were mechanically simpler and lighter. They were therefore marketed as being suitable for travelers and, because they could be produced more cheaply than keyboard machines, as budget machines for users who needed to produce small quantities of typed correspondence. For example, the Simplex Typewriter Company made index typewriters for 1/40th the price of a Remington typewriter. The index typewriter's niche appeal, however, soon disappeared as, on the one hand, new keyboard typewriters became lighter and more portable, and on the other, refurbished second-hand machines became more available. The last widely available Western index machine was the Mignon typewriter produced by AEG, which was produced until 1934. Considered one of the very best of the index typewriters, part of the Mignon's popularity was that it featured interchangeable indexes as well as type, fonts, and character sets. This is something very few keyboard machines were capable of, and only at considerable added cost. Although they were pushed out of the market in most of the world by keyboard machines, successful Japanese and Chinese typewriters are of the index type, albeit with a very much larger index and number of type elements. Embossing tape label makers are the most common index typewriters today, and perhaps the most common typewriters of any type still being manufactured. The platen was mounted on a carriage that moved horizontally to the left, automatically advancing the typing position after each character was typed. The carriage return lever at the far left was then pressed to the right to return the carriage to its starting position and rotating the platen to advance the paper vertically. A small bell was struck a few characters before the right-hand margin was reached to warn the operator to complete the word and then use the carriage return lever. Other types of typewriters. 1884. The Hammond Ideal typewriter with case by Hammond Typewriter Company Limited in the United States. Despite an unusual curved keyboard, the Hammond became popular because of its superior print quality and changeable typeface. Invented by James Hammond of Boston, Massachusetts in 1880 and commercially released in 1884. The type is carried on a pair of interchangeable rotating sectors, one controlled by each half of the keyboard. A small hammer pushes the paper against the ribbon and type sector to print each character. The mechanism was later adapted to give a straight, QWERTY keyboard and proportional spacing. 1888, the Fitch typewriter, made by the Fitch Typewriter Company from Brooklyn, New York, and later in the UK with a slightly different look. Operators of the early typewriters had to work blind. The typed text emerged only after several lines had been completed or the carriage was lifted to look underneath the page. To look underneath at the page. The Fitch was one of the first machines to allow prompt corrections of mistakes with its visible writing. It is said to be the second machine operating on the visible writing system. The type bears were positioned behind the paper, and the writing area surfaced upwards so that the result could be seen instantly. A curved frame kept the emerging paper from obscuring the keyboard, but the Fitch was soon eclipsed by machines in which the paper could be fed more conveniently at the rear. 1893, Gardner typewriter. This typewriter, patented by Mr. J. Gardner in 1893, was an attempt to reduce the size and cost. Although it prints 84 symbols, it only has 14 keys and 2 change case keys. Several characters were indicated on each key, and the character printed is determined by the position of the case keys, which choose one of 6 cases. 1896, the Underwood 1 typewriter, 10 inches, Pica number 990. This was the first typewriter with a typing area fully visible to the typist until a key is struck. These features, copied by subsequent typewriters, allowed the typist to see and, if necessary, correct the typing as it is proceeded. The mechanism was developed in the U.S. by Franz X. Wagner from about 1892 and taken up in 1895 by John T. Underwood, a producer of office supplies. Standardization. By about 1910, the manual or mechanical typewriter had reached a somewhat standardized design. There were minor variations from one manufacturer to another, but most typewriters followed the concept that each key was attached to a type bar that had a corresponding letter molded, in reverse, into its striking head. When a key was struck briskly and firmly, the type bar hit a ribbon, usually made of inked fabric, making a printed mark on the paper wrapped around the cylindrical platen. The platen was mounted on a carriage that moved horizontally to the left, automatically advancing the typing position after each character was typed. The carriage return lever at the far left was then pressed to the right to return the carriage to its starting position and rotating the platen to advance the paper vertically. A small bell was struck a few characters before the right-hand margin was reached to warn the operator to complete the word and then use the carriage return lever. Typewriters for languages written right to left operate in the opposite position. By 1900, notable typewriter manufacturers included E. Remington and Sons, IBM, Godrej, Imperial Typewriter Company, Oliver Typewriter Company, Olivetti, Royal Typewriter Company, Smith Corona, Underwood Typewriter Company, Facet, Adler, and Olympia Work. After the market had matured under the market dominance of large companies from Britain, Europe, and the United States, but before the advent of daisy wheel and electronic machines, the typewriter market faced strong competition from less expensive typewriters from Asia, including the Brothers Industries and Silver Seiko of Japan. Front striking. In most of the early typewriters, the type bars struck upward against the paper and pressed the bottom of the platen understrike so that the typist could not see when the text was typed. What was typed was not visible until a carriage return caused it to scroll into view. The difficulty with any other arrangement was ensuring the type bars fell back into place reliably when the key was released. This was eventually achieved with various ingenious mechanical designs and so-called visible typewriters, which used front striking, in which the type bars struck forward against the front side of the platen, which became standard. One of the first front strike typewriters was the Daughtery Visible, introduced in 1893. Four-bank keyboard. The Daughtery Visible also introduced the four-bank keyboard, which also became standard, although the Underwood, which came out 2 years later, was the first major typewriter to support front striking and a four-bank keyboard. Shift key. A significant innovation was the shift key, introduced with the Remington No. 2 in 1878. This key physically shifted either the basket of type bars, in which case the typewriter is described as a basket shift, or paper case carriage, in which the case of the typewriter is described as carriage shift. Either mechanism caused a different portion of the type bar to come into contact with the ribbon and platen. The result is that each type bar could type two different characters, cutting the number of keys and type bars in half, and simplifying the internal mechanisms considerably. The obvious use of this was to allow letter keys to type both upper and lower case, but normally the number keys were also duplexed, allowing access to special symbols such as the percent sign and ampersand symbol. Before the shift key, typewriters had to have a separate key and type bar for uppercase letters. In essence, the typewriter had two full keyboards, one above the other. With the Shift key, manufacturing costs, and therefore purchase price, were greatly reduced, and the typist operation was simplified. Both factors contributed greatly to mass adoption of the technology. A typing game is a genre of video games that involves correctly entering letters, words, or sentences on the keyboard. It began as a subgenre of educational games designed to familiarize players with keyboard use and to improve skill at touch typing. Successfully typing a letter or word is tied to an action, such as firing a weapon at an attacking spaceship. Companies associated with video games like Brunderbund, Atari Inc., and Sirius Software all released typing games in the early 1980s. More formal education software like Mavis Beacon Teaches Typing from 1987 incorporates minigames as a practice option. Some later games, like Typewriter, add online competition based on players' typing speeds, making typing more addictive. In the 2000s, a number of independently produced parodies of educational typing games was reinvigorating the genre. Other games are built around typing as a method of interaction, removing the educational aspect altogether. The Typing of the Dead is an arcade game that was developed by WoW Entertainment and published by Sega for the Naomi software. The game was released in Japanese arcades in 1999 and was ported to the Sega Dreamcast in 2001 by Smilebit. A Microsoft Windows version was released in 2000, and a PlayStation 2 port followed in 2004. The Typing of the Dead is a modification of Sega's 1998 light gun arcade game, The House of the Dead 2, in which the gun is replaced by a computer keyboard. The player takes the role of a secret agent in a zombie-infested Venice and must quickly type words, letters, and phrases in order to kill fast-advancing enemies. Despite falling under the criteria of edutainment, the game was lauded by mainstream game critics for its humor, difficulty, and originality. The PC version of The Typing of the Dead sold 120,000 units in 2003. A PlayStation 2 port was called The Typing of the Dead Zombie Panic. This version was released in Japan in late December 2004 and was packaged with a USB keyboard. The game was mostly unchanged, although the Dreamcast backpacks were replaced with PlayStation 2 backpacks, and new minigames were incorporated into the main story. Two sequels, The Typing of the Dead 2, which was based on House of the Dead 3, and The Typing of the Dead Overkill, based on House of the Dead Overkill, were released for PC in 2007 and 2013, respectively. English of the Dead, another version of House of the Dead 2, was released as a language learning game for the Nintendo DS in Japan in 2008. In 2012, an iOS remake was released entitled Flick of the Dead. Gameplay. The Typing of the Dead, described variously as a remake or as a mod of the original House of the Dead 2. It retains the original's first-person rail shooter style, but instead of shooting zombies and other enemies, the player must type out words or phrases to kill them. The required word, sentence, or phrase is displayed in a box that appears with the enemy. The phrase's length and complexity increase as the game progresses. Other features retained include the rescue challenges that alter the path of the game takes to its final destination and the secrets and bonus items hidden throughout the game. All levels contain specific challenge areas in which the player is required to kill a certain number of zombies in a limited time. These end with a boss battle that uses some altered form of usual gameplay, such as a long phrase or question whose answer must be typed correctly. The console ports have original and arcade modes for the main storyline, and tutorial, drill, and boss modes for additional typing training. Most other changes are superficial, as replacement of weapons wielded by zombies with harmless items, and equipping the AMS agents with keyboards attached to backpack Sega Dreamcasts with oversized batteries. Plot. The plot of the game closely follows that of the House of the Dead 2. The story begins on February 26, 2000, when several AMS agents have been dispatched to investigate a zombie outbreak in Venice, Italy. The player can control two characters, James and Gary, who are sent to find the original game's G, and then tasked with restoring order. Responsibility for the outbreaks is soon traced to Goldman, a banking tycoon and scientist who attempts to end human control of the Earth. Much of the game revolves around destroying Goldman's creation, including the final boss of the Emperor. One of three possible humorous ending sequences occurs, depending on the answers given to the questions asked to defeat the Emperor. For the endings, there are three possible endings. Explosion ending. The character defeats the Emperor, then sees Goldman offing himself by falling off the building. An explosion is seen as Goldman hits the ground. This ending is achieved by typing honest answers to questions asked in the boss fight. The bungee ending. This is similar to the first, but a bungee cord can be seen attached to Goldman's leg. Goldman returns to where he was and belches. This ending is achieved by typing a combination of honest and untruthful or strange answers to questions asked in the boss fight. The Superman ending. Also similar to the first, but as Goldman bids farewell to the player, he raises his hands and rises into the sky. This ending is achieved by typing untruthful answers to questions asked in the boss fight. Releases. The Typing of the Dead was originally released for arcades in Japan in 1999 with a special cabinet equipped with dual QWERTY keyboards. The game was one of the first developments by Smilebit, a team of Sega developers that had recently spun off as a new company. The first home console release was for the Japanese Sega Dreamcast market on March 30th, 2000. The North American release took place the following January. A PC port was produced by Empire Interactive and released in September 2001. A second PC release, Typing of the Dead 2003, featuring support for higher resolution and a kids mode, featuring a new character with Japanese voice acting, was released in Japan only. Several other Japanese exclusive PC versions followed. The original PC version was made available on GameTap in October 2007. Reception. In Japan, Game Machine listed The Typing of the Dead on their March 15, 2000 issue as being the fourth most successful dedicated arcade game of the month. The Typing of the Dead was regarded overall by critics as an enjoyable game, receiving favorable reviews on both platforms according to the review aggregation website Metacritic. It was nominated for GameSpot's annual Most Innovative prize among console games, which went to Grand Theft Auto 3.
Ready, go!
In Japan, Famitsu gave Dreamcast version a score of 35 out of 40. Reviewers appreciated the absurdist humor of the game's format, especially in the unusual phrases the game generates during later levels. The subpar voice acting of the original House of the Dead 2 was considered to enhance the aspect of the game. The quality of the graphics was criticized to varying degrees, and they had not been updated from the original House of the Dead 2 arcade version. PC World was also unimpressed with the game's promise that they listed it as a runner-up on the top 10 worst games list. Game Informer has named the game the weirdest of all time. While this Ideas typewriter set isn't based on one specific typewriter, during my research I was able to narrow down the design to a real-life counterpart, or parts of counterparts. The Smith Corona Silent 1S typewriter, but without the top cover, has an almost perfect boxy shape with its use of circular flat keys. Its only faults are that the contoured frame for the keys and its model is from the 1930s. My second closest pick is the Olympia SM1 typewriter. The keys frame is a closer shape to the Lego model, and it is from the 1950s. However, the typewriter is overall more curvy in its shapes, such as the upper housing and the keys themselves. I remember typing school papers on a modern typewriter before we finally got our family computer. I should probably use some of these typing games since I am admittedly not that good of a typist. I need to break my bad habit of looking at the keys when I type. But at least my fingers are in the right spaces. Total build time today, 6 hours, 8 minutes, 27 seconds. Which means you could watch all 5 episodes of the Netflix original series Typewriter at around 240 minutes, and the film California Typewriter at 130 minutes. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Remember to like, subscribe, share, ring that bell, all of the things for the YouTubes. Thank you.